Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, get me fired? Say goodbye to your bonus and promotion. Won't pronounce my name correctly? Okay, suit yourself. Treat me like my boss's secretary? Let's see how that goes for you. Before we get into today's episode, remember to subscribe so you never miss a video. So let's get started. Get me fired? Say goodbye to your bonus and promotion. This happened a good long while ago. I was in high school and got a job at one of the big box stores in the computer department. This store chain had an in-house technician department, which was always where I wanted to go. After busting my ass in sales for 2 years, putting up with rude customers, silly rules and all the other glorious trappings of retail job, I finally got a chance to be promoted to the technician department. It was not as glamorous as I thought it would be. I quickly found out that most of the repairs consisted of running the pre-packaged antivirus suite, updating Windows and doing data backups prior to wiping computers clean and reinstalling them. I always liked tinkering with hardware more, but since 80% of customers had laptops and those repairs were deemed too complicated by corporate, we would just send the laptops out to get repaired by the third-party vendor. It was still better than sales by a long shot, and we had a great team working in the technician area, except for one dude, let's call him Mike. He always behaved like his crap smelled like roses. He was technically a lead technician, and even though that just meant he had a little more authority, he had access to a corporate account to arrange shipments of computers to and from our store. He was acting like he was the manager of the department. Nevertheless, our actual manager was a splendid dude that took care of us, and as such, Mike's douchery did not bother any of us that much. Fast forward a little and our awesome manager found a much better job. This opened up a spot for manager, and since the whole store supervision was going through a shakeup, the general manager was fired for embezzlement and all the people he hired, 90% of managers, were under review. This led to everybody trying their hardest not to fuck up, and the new GM decided that since our department was one of the best in the district, he would not try to hire an outsider, but will promote from within. Now Mike was working at this store for almost 10 years at that point, and a couple of people that started working with him as sales associates were by this point managers and assistant managers. One of them, Brittany, was an assistant manager in charge of customer services and checkout. One of the conditions for Mike's official promotion to manager was to keep the #1 spot in the district performance-wise. One of the key metrics was the rejection rate from our third-party vendor. If we mistakenly sent them a software problem to fix, they would charge us extra. Mike started obsessing about the numbers, especially when it came to the rejection rate. He insisted that we would spend extra time to confirm issues, even when there were recalls from manufacturers for these items. I hated this bureaucracy, since it meant that people needed to wait almost the maximum allowed time to get their computers back. So a few times I skipped the extra diagnostics when I knew for sure the problem was hardware. One day, Mike decided to do an audit on all outgoing machines and found out that I've sent 4 units skipping his extra checks. He told me that he will write me up for it, but when he tried, GM told him that he is not a manager yet, and I have shown to the GM that I followed the corporate procedure in diagnosing these units. I thought that was the end of this, but I was sorely mistaken. Mike hated that I showed GM that Mike's procedure was inefficient and that he was denied power over me. About a month later, I got a call from Mike asking if I could come to the store on my day off because there was an issue with a customer. When I came in, I was greeted by Mike with a shit-eating grin, and he told me to wait in the back and not to work on any computers. After about an hour, Mike and Brittany come in and ask me to head to the front office. They started an official write-up process and claimed that I have made a mistake creating a backup of customers' data and have placed a DVD with no data on it into the box that was returned to customer and then wiped his PC clean. I knew that it was bullshit, since I always copy the data to an external hard drive, run antivirus to make sure that nothing bad got copied, and then burn DVDs. Yet, when I asked to check the external hard drive, Mike said that due to my negligence I was not allowed back in the tech area. He went to check the hard drive and said there was nothing on it. At that point I knew he was bullshitting, but him and Brittany were hell-bent on completing the write-up. I have asked for a senior management to be present, and was shot down again. Turns out GM was on vacation. They completed the write-up and told me that due to the egregious error that cost the company tens of thousands of dollars, I was not allowed to work in the tech room and I would be relegated back to the sales floor. I told them to shove it and submitted my resignation on the spot. I later found out that a week later they gave the customer the data that was on the hard drive all this time. Mike simply erased the DVDs. I grabbed a DVD-RW by mistake for that backup, and waited for the customer to come back and complain. I have also called the corporate HR line and told them what happened. They said that since I quit with a letter of resignation, they would not launch an investigation, but they have received and recorded my complaint. Through luck and the fact that I was a good hardware tech, I landed a job at a shop that did hardware repairs a week later and started in another week. Turns out, this depot was the service center that covered the entire district, and they had the master contract with the big box chain where I worked. Since I have worked as the tech in that store, I was more than familiar with their labeling and ticketing system. For tracking purposes, the label included the store and technician number. After a couple of weeks, I gathered some goodwill at my new job and started trading the units with my colleagues to work on as many units from my old store as possible. Over the next 3 months, I made sure that every single unit sent in by Mike would come back with an extra charge. Also, it turned out that Mike, since he was in charge of shipping, would sometimes steal other technicians' tickets to boost his personal performance numbers to secure that manager promotion. Well, that bit him in the ass hard. There was one week in particular, when he sent in over 15 units out of 20 to get fixed, and 15 units came back with extra software charge. I have also kept detailed records that proved that the Mike did not follow his own policy of extra checks. When the performance figures came out for that quarter, store crashed into 5th place from number 1, Mike missed out on his promotion, and a big bonus that was promised to him. A good buddy of mine from the store got the manager position a few months after that, and I have explained to him how to reduce the number of software charges to almost zero, so he looked like a superstar. Mike was first relocated to lead technician, then he was either let go or he quit, I'm not sure. Last I heard, he started his own mobile technician business that folded after a year. What I didn't know is that this whole incident with Mike fucking up led the GM to review everything Mike did, including my write-up and dismissal. As it turns out, they did not even register the write-up since I quit on the spot, and buried it. The only way GM was able to find it is because of the HR complaint that was filed against both Mike and Brittany. GM was not pleased that they went behind his back to get rid of someone and fired Brittany. He was a very decent man who called me later that day and apologized and even offered me my old job back. I thanked him, but I was making more money at the new place and did not have to deal with customers, so I passed. Won't pronounce my name correctly? Okay. Suit yourself. Obligatory apologies because I'm on mobile. So when I was in 3rd grade, think 8 years old, I had this teacher who was retiring at the end of the year and knew it. She decided that she didn't like me, for some reason. So I have a very popular white girl name. For sake of anonymity, I'm gonna use a fake name here. Let's say my name is Bailey. Pronounced, Bailey. Pretty straightforward, right? Well, this teacher always pronounced it, Bali. It hurt, cause I was like 8 and wanted to be called my own name. When I asked her why she pronounced my name wrong, she said it was because of her accent. Okay, fair. However, I had a classmate named Kaylee. Somehow, that accent disappeared and she was able to pronounce her name perfectly fine. Once I heard her call Kaylee by her proper name, I went right up to her, with all my 8-year-old bravery, and asked her why she wouldn't say my name right but would say hers right. She didn't answer me, like legitimately ignored me. Okay, my turn. So this teacher's last name was something like Tner. That was the way it was pronounced. And on the first day of that year, she made sure that we knew it was pronounced Tner, and not Tunner, or Tanner. So guess who was called Mrs. Tunner for the rest of the year? The teacher who called me Bali. Oh, and as an added layer of BS, when we had parent-teacher conferences, she pronounced my name correctly. Interesting. Treat me like my boss's secretary? Let's see how that goes for you. A couple years ago, I worked for a small team within a larger organization that ran a rather niche grant program. It was literally my boss, let's call him Charles, me, and 2 part-time consultants who did our finances bookkeeping. My boss and I had a great rapport. He hired me to essentially run large aspects of our program, and gave me pretty much unilateral oversight of the key elements of it, from program design and development to execution. He was a great manager in this respect. He provided a lot of mentoring and guidance, but mostly got out of my way, and only wanted me to escalate the big stuff that I felt rose to the level. While I didn't love the job itself, I loved having so much freedom. I was sorta bridging that gap of moving from a young professional into a mid-career professional, and so this offered a lot of growth opportunities. One thing that made my boss great was that he always had my back. One day, I was in the office pretty much alone. My boss was on the board of a few orgs, and he was off at a half-day meeting. Our offices were right across from each other, so I could typically see him when he came and left, and I could hear his phone when it rang. That morning, his phone was ringing, and ringing, and ringing. Then finally, my phone rang. It was the executive director, Ed, from here on out, of one of the organizations we worked with, an older man, maybe in his 70s. The conversation went something like this: "Me, Ouroboros 13 speaking, how can I help you?" Ed, sounding frustrated: "I've been calling Charles all morning but he's not answering." Me, "Yes, he's at a half-day board meeting. Is there something I can help you with?" Ed, "I doubt it. Maybe you could just check his calendar and put a call with me on there for when he's back." Me, "I'm sorry, I wish I could but I don't have access to his calendar, so I can't see what he has in the afternoon and I can't add things to his calendar. I'm sure he'll be back soon." Ed, cuts me off. "That's unacceptable. How does his secretary not to have access to his calendar? Who sets his meetings?" Now here's the thing. While I am my boss's employee, I am not his secretary. I don't have access to his calendar, and my boss sets his own meetings. Not only that, but I had corresponded with, and even met, this Ed in the past. My signature block and business card clearly say, Program Manager, as does my bio on our web page. Alas, this wasn't the first time someone had assumed that I was my boss's secretary. It happens. I was in my late 20s at the time, and as a young professional woman working for a man, it seemed a common misconception. Usually, it's not a big deal. Normally, I clarify my role and people feel a little embarrassed, and we go on about our lives. So, I clarified my role for the Ed. Me, just to clarify, I'm not Charles's secretary. He doesn't have a secretary. I'm actually the program manager. Charles manages his schedule on his own. If you want to shoot us both an email, I'll make sure that he responds and sets up a time to talk to you. Otherwise, when he comes back I'll let him know you called so you can arrange a meeting." Ed, cuts me off again. "Well, I have an important question for him, and it's unacceptable that I can't set up a meeting with him, and I also can't get an answer to it right away. How is this good client service?" Me, "Well, you know, I am the program manager. Why don't you tell me what your question is about, and let's see if I can help you." The Ed explained that he called to talk about the application process and requirements for a program of ours, one that I actually ran. Not only that, but the nature of his questions were not so complicated that it necessitated escalating to my boss. These were things I could easily help him with. Me, "Well, you're in luck. I am actually the one who runs that program, not Charles. I've designed that application process, and I would actually be able to answer your questions with a lot more detail than Charles would. He would just defer you to me. Why don't you tell me what questions you have, and I can answer them?" Ed, long pause. Then, in a patronizing tone, "Young lady, I'm sure you're very bright, and I'm sure you want to be helpful, but I'd really prefer to talk to Charles. Why don't you just take a message for him for me, okay?" Now I'm kinda pissed. I'm about to tell him where he can shove his message when I see my boss coming down the hallway. So, I tell the Ed that he's in luck, I see Charles now. Let me go tell him you're on the line and get back to you. So, I put the Ed on hold and intercept my boss. I kinda explain the situation. My boss chuckles to himself and says, "Transfer him over." I transfer the call and I can hear my boss pick up the phone. "Charles, Chuck. Speaking. Oh hi there, Ed, how can I help you?" "Yes. Yes, I was at a half-day board meeting. You have a question about which program? Okay, what's your question?" You want to know about the application process and criteria." Okay, well have you spoken to my program manager Ouroboros 13? "Well, she's actually the one who manages that program. Yes, she actually designed the application process." Sorry, Ed, I wouldn't be able to answer that specific question. No, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. Yes, that's right, Ouroboros 13 manages that entire program, and she's really the expert on it. Let me go see if she's in her office. I hear my boss put the phone on hold. He takes a long pause before he gets back on. Charles, I'm sorry, Ed, but it appears she must have stepped away from her desk. Why don't you send her an email and I'm sure she'll get back to you. No, again I'm sorry, but she's really leading on that program, you'll have to speak with her. I could transfer you to her voicemail if you wish. No, okay. Do you have her email? Great, so send her an email and I'm sure she will get back to you on all your questions ASAP. The Ed didn't email me for a couple days, and when he finally did I helpfully walked him through all the details of the program he was interested in. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe and we'll see you in the next video.